artists outside of music, including film, and we're very excited to be presenting a work that Brian wrote specifically for present music for this concert today. So welcome, Brian. And to my right, I'm very happy to welcome back Raven Chacon, whose work, yes. Whose work encompasses a similarly broad kind of spectrum, including music in genres that defy our understandings of classical music, music for noise music, work for installations, and including visual work that I'm very curious to hear some more about. So welcome back, Raven. Yes. So today's program we call Simple Songs, which is the title of one of the pieces on the program, a piece by Aaron J. Kernis. And when thinking about the Thanksgiving tradition, about what does it mean to do a concert every year that somehow has something to do with Thanksgiving, this tradition that is kind of uniquely, it is in fact a very American tradition that is about family, about gratitude in name, about love, about life. If you ask me, any concert is a celebration of life and of love and of community, but song in particular as a form is so much rooted in bringing people together. And this is what this concert celebrates, from music by Leilua Lancelotti at the very beginning of the program, a piece called Kuo Inoa, which is a piece that takes a sort of traditional Hawaiian anthem and spreads it out over this beautiful texture of very quickly moving strings and just shadows of other instrumental writing. That over the course of the piece you hear evolving, kind of emerging slowly, these melodies that in the Hawaiian anthem are connected to a name that actually spell out an identity, which is what that first piece is all about. We'll hear some more about Brian's piece, which comes next on the program, and Raven's piece, which follows Brian's. At the end of the program, we hear a pair of works, one by John Dowland, a lutenist and composer. This is one of the older pieces present music has played, this piece from 1603, that serves as a sort of, it's arranged by the composer from a song that he wrote, called Flow My Tears. A very personal expression, this one, that's sort of, we will play it as a sort of like long upbeat into Aaron J. Kernis' Simple Songs, which sets poetry from Hildegard of Bingen, a wonderful composer herself, and poet, a nun who lived in Germany in the 12th century and kind of revolutionized music in the church. Poetry by Ryokan, a Japanese monk. Rumi as well is represented, and two psalms. These very simple expressions that Kernis has set very, very beautifully. We're excited to have Ariadne Greif back to sing that piece, and also Raven Chacon's piece. So I'd love to engage our artists here first. Brian, I'd love to hear from you about your piece. which is, by the way, called Staircase Variations. We approached Brian not too long ago to write us a brand new piece for this wonderful occasion, and I'd love to just hear the basics of where the piece came from.
Okay, and thank you all for having me, and this is a great honor. And as David said, I'm not a Milwaukee native, but I've been here 14 years, so I call Milwaukee my home, and I really love it here. What a great music scene and present music being a huge part of that. It's such an honor. And I'm grateful, which is part of the Thanksgiving. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to work with such a great group. Genesis of the piece. So when I turned 50, I decided that I was going to write 50 pieces when I was 50. So this is one of the ones I didn't finish, but it was a little germ of an idea. And yes, I can stand up. Sorry about that. I won't start over. So I had this little, to me it was an earworm, but it's just a little sequence of intervals. Later on I had a project working on a film, and I thought, well, as a composer you never throw anything away. I can use that idea in the film. It ended up not working in the film, but the film was called Back at the Staircase. And so hence, getting this commission, the idea that it won't go away, I'll use it yet again, and no one can tell me no. So that's where the idea of staircase came from. Then what could I do with this idea that would actually be like a staircase, building up layers, going up, coming down. You could fall up, you could fall downstairs, you end up somewhere. And taking that and kind of deconstructing it and seeing what will become of it. So the actual music that you will hear has nothing to do with even the cue that was in the film. So I took it all the way back to what should this really be? And hopefully what you'll hear is what it should really be.
Yeah, that's great. One piece of what you just said I want to ask more about. You said that you're using this theme and no one can tell you no. Like, what do you mean by that? No one can tell you no.
Well, it relates to film music in that you are subservient to picture and to the director's vision. It's their project, and I'm just hired to supply, and they may ask for your opinion, but the directors I've worked for are all very opinionated, and they know exactly what they want. So this particular idea, it called too much attention to itself, right? So it wasn't, innocuous isn't the right word, but innocuous enough to be subservient and really just, motion picture music should just add emotional context so that it can confirm or deny what the audience is thinking. And I think rightfully so, the director was like, this idea could stand on its own, so I thank you for that.
The title of the piece, Staircase Variations. So when I think of variations in kind of the classical model, right, we think of a theme that we hear a number of times in many different guises, right? And is that the way that how have you taken the idea of variations and put it in this piece?
Okay, so yes, it is not a traditional theme and variations. There's a few different ideas that happen at the very beginning of the piece, and it's more about transformation, and that is the variation. So that's one of the levels, right? The other level is just, these are variations on what was going to be used in this staircase film, and it just was kind of a catchy title, at least to me. The variations come as, there's three basic ideas. There's a little ascending intervals that happens in the clarinet at the very beginning. Then there's a rhythmic punctuation that happens, and then there's a two-note kind of cry to the wilderness kind of a thing, which starts the journey. As the piece progresses, those elements are varied and combined and developed. And hopefully, by the end of it, you will feel the transformation that occurs from more of a dark, questioning place into a affirming and grateful place. And yet it's the ideas have been turned upside down, inside out, and you can see that perhaps a dark thought, when looked at in a different way, can lead to more of a salvation kind of a redemption, grateful gratitude.
That's lovely. One other question on my mind is so this commission was with the idea of writing a piece for this context, this cathedral, this ensemble. Brian, for all of you may have seen at many present music concerts if you've been around. You are very familiar with this ensemble, with our work. You've been around this group longer than I have, right? And have been to more present music concerts than I've been able to go to myself, I'm sure. So can you tell us a little bit about what went into your compositional process, thinking about these musicians, the context of today's concert?
Sure, absolutely. And it's very true. I wrote it for many of the players. I had their sounds in my ears, and I do know them personally, and I'm very excited to write for them and for this amazing space. One of the ideas of the piece was to ring the space, to trigger it, to just let the music, the gestures, the sound of the space is incorporated into the idea and adds to it, as opposed to it could be played in any place. I mean, I'd love it to be played anywhere, but it's really specifically tailored to this building and this space, and that it's a sacred space, and trying to show a journey of gratitude for this Thanksgiving concert, which is such a landmark linchpin of Milwaukee music scene. And to write, as I said, to write for the performers who, many of them are cherished friends, so it's very gratifying.
Thank you, Brian. Wonderful. I can't wait to share Brian's piece with you all. So a couple of years ago, Raven had a very similar assignment to write a piece specifically for this program, or actually initially our invitation was to write any piece at any time for our season back in 21, 22 it must have been. And Raven said, actually, let's do something here with this Thanksgiving concert. And, so a lot's happened since then in Raven's life. That piece went on to win the Pulitzer Prize in music, which very, very richly deserved. And then in the very recent past, Raven was given the MacArthur Fellowship, also known as the Genius Grant. So we are here with a confirmed genius. I'm looking for the pin. Where's the back? But we're really grateful that we managed to convince you to write this piece for us a couple years ago. And today we hear a different work, a work that was, I'm trying to remember, you read it before or after Voiceless Mass?
Before, yeah.
Before. And so the title of this work is Owl Song. And I wonder if you can tell us about the origin and what went into this work.
Yeah. Well, first off, I mean, thank you for commissioning Voiceless Mass. So we did it together. It was such a beautiful surprise. But at the same time, I mean, for anybody who was here too, I mean, there was, a very special moment, that concert. You could fill that I had. It was going to be one of my pieces, one of my few pieces that got played more than once. You know, I had no idea if it would, you know, any of my work would get played more than 1 or 2 times. And so last night we just did it in Vancouver, playing over it down here, and that's how it's been. But Owl Song, I mean, having, you know, on that note, I don't remember writing an Owl Song, to be honest with you. I thought I did. I thought I remembered. And I wrote the piece in 2021, just, you know, I think it was a piece before writing Voiceless Mass. Of course, it's not like do one, then do the next. And all of this happens at the same time as you're working on several things at once, maybe 10 things at once. And, but this was right before I think I really got into writing Voiceless Mass. And I was also working on another piece, or I had just finished another piece for bassoon, solo bassoon. And that one is a score for a colleague of mine, a bassoonist from Yakima Nation in Washington. Her name was Jacqueline Wilson. And I was researching Yakima stories and had come upon the story of an owl. And an owl being this kind of shapeshifter. And so I wrote this piece. This piece is about timbral changes, his big beyondos, you know, like using just one pitch that shifts. It's about academia. It's about the horrors of shapeshifting too much, code switch, identities. And, you know, it's a part of a series called Forzi Kalisha. There's a book of these graphic scores that were released last year. And they're all conceptual portraitures of different friends of mine on different topics, different themes. And so while I was writing this owl-inspired solo for Jackie, I was coming up with other ideas about the owl and that shapeshifting. And I think that extended into this piece. Kind of like Brian was saying, like there's leftovers. You know, you keep taking those bits and you know, extending upon them. And then yeah, and then I just now looked at the score and I don't remember writing it. You know, this is a pandemic project, and so that's all a blur, right? And I didn't get to go to the performance. This was commissioned by a group in Norway, Bid 20 Ensemble, to be performed at the Borealis Festival. But I didn't get to go, you know, I had to travel, and so I didn't get to be in the presence of it when it was premiered. And, you know, that was another thing I realized during the pandemic. You know, for a while, I think it was the first week or two, art exhibitions were shut down, right? And they tried to do online art exhibitions, but no, it didn't work. You know? It's like that little thumbnail of a sculpture or something. But it got me realizing it's, you know, it's sometimes we go to those places, we go to the art galleries, art museums to be in the presence of that sculpture, not necessarily to look at it. And so for me, this relationship with live music or understanding a piece, especially my own piece, I have to be with it in the same room, even if it's for a rehearsal. And so I haven't had that experience yet. I haven't even been to a rehearsal yet. I was in Vancouver, you see, so this will be my first time hearing it. And I'm guessing you all too. You were in Norway, you went to Norway during the pandemic. You were in Norway. And so yeah, that's the story.
That's great. I wonder if you can say more about the image of the owl as a shapeshifter and so you mentioned timbral shifts or different kinds of sounds, right? In the piece we have the same note repeated 4 times in a row, but each time a very different sound, a different fingering, a different placement on the strings, right? So I love the idea, and I just want to hear more about the story of, or what it is about the owl that shifts.
Oh, I don't know. That was just something I came upon. It's not my tribe's story. I mean, there's a lot of different ideas of the owl, a lot of different power, that we see in different animals. And, the one thing I will say is that I'm not trying to replicate the owl. And none of this is linear. Right now, I'm working on a project about bird calls, about fabricating bird calls, using the field recordings from the Ottawa system. And it's going to be presented at Ottawa, James, on the land deal there in Harlem, Upper Manhattan. But I'm not trying to replicate these birds. The idea is to replicate the attempts at replicating the birds. And so I think owl song is in that nature too, to more looking at humans' attempts to acknowledge these animals. So it's really not about the owl at all, I don't think.
That's great. Great. Well, thank you, Rick, and I'm very excited to share this piece with all of you, and for the first time with you. All right. Well, we have some time for questions for these artists about the work. If you all have questions, let us know.
The word you said for a constantly changing timbre?
Bisbigliando. Yeah, particularly on woodwinds. So, bisbigliando.
I think, is that how you say it?
You woodwind? Yeah. So like, let's say you have middle C, and there's a default way to play middle C. Maybe the correct way, or the easiest way to play that pitch. Well, there's a lot of different ways to play that pitch. You can use different fingerings, bend the tone up or down. Even on the guitar or the violin or the strings, you can play some notes on other strings. And they'll all sound different, slightly different. And so that's the but the idea too is in this piece, the voice can do that as well. The voice can do that better than any instrument. We can. How many different voices are there? 9 billion or something like that, at least of humans, and then those who aren't with us anymore. Yeah, and then each of us can take on different characters. So pitch is irrelevant. The timbre is all the information. And so extending that into other instruments, the triangle is one you'll hear shapeshift. I can't remember what else is. Yeah, but that's the idea. Yeah, changing the timbre and shifting between it, maybe rhythmically or in cycles. Yeah,
Similar question.
I have a question for both of you. One title and description has to do with stairs, up and down. We have a visual idea of what stairs are. And also, you talked about the space, and Raven, you talked about creating something that was special for this space as well. Could you address, do you see your music? Is there a visual component to what you're doing? And I'm thinking here a little bit of, say, Bach, who in his score included visual elements in the score itself, non-rational, only the musicians saw it. Could you address the visual part of your work, if there is one?
Well, for me, I'd say less so. I'm definitely dealing in kind of traditional notation. Yes, I use a few extended techniques, but in the way my mind works, I'm dealing with pitches and rhythms, and that's the way I hear music. As far as seeing it, I don't have like synesthesia, which is where you see colors and you can say this chord is blue or red. I don't have that. It's really just my ears for me. But definitely hearing the sound of the space, because I have been here many, many times. You know, the piece was totally informed by what you could do to move the molecules in space. Because that's all we're really doing is disturbing the molecules, and then we react to it with little hairs and our ears. And it becomes something. So that informed it. So it's not so much sight, it's truly that granularity of sound. So that's what I'm aware of.
Yeah, C, define C, you know. I don't see the music. I can see all the things that could go wrong in a concert. That's what you mean, like C. I like to envision the people performing. It's important to me who's on stage. You know, so like, of course, when writing for a female voice, you know, I imagine who that person might be, the presence that they carry on stage. Again, back to the presence of being in the presence of that sculpture in the failed online exhibition. To me, it's very important to at least envision myself to be amongst, like David said, the community of people in a gathering. It's very important for me in these compositions, whether that gathering is ensemble plus audience or it's just the ensemble. I've written a lot of music that's just only for the people to play them, who played it, and there's no audience. It's not meant for an audience. It's meant for a shared experience of the string quintet, for instance. And yeah, you could record it and people will hear it, but it's not for them. You know, it's just for people, for people to have an experience together. Luckily, Owl Song, luckily Voiceless Mass is not one of those pieces. Wouldn't have won a Pulitzer. But do I see? Well, I also work with film and video and installation and sculpture. So in those senses, I mean, I have projects that are you know, they're sculptural or they're films. So I in those situations, I think visually as well. Maybe not as I'm composing a piece, but I think the ultimate outcome or artwork is intended to be a visual artwork for some of these pieces too. Theater, you know, of course, like the opera, like I wrote an opera, and that one, you have to imagine somewhat the theater of that and what that's going to look like as you, because there's a story attached to it. So it's hard to separate the sound from the story in that situation.
Maybe one more question we would have time for. Anybody else wondering something of these artists? Okay. All right. Well, we'll be around, I'm sure, to talk. I wanted to say just a couple more words. We're very delighted to be joined again by our wonderful friends with the group called, now known as Little Priest Singers. If you've been to the Thanksgiving concert before, you have seen the Bucks Native American singing and drumming group. They're now known as Little Priest Singers, and we're very glad to welcome them back. And it's such a wonderful part of this program. On a personal note, I just want to mention that I'm very happy to be back. It's been a while since I've been able to be here in Milwaukee. I've had to make the difficult decision to take a step back from the stage here and my work with present music because of a family ongoing family health crisis that just requires me to be spend more time with my family. So it feeds me to be here, and I look forward to being here more often. Though it might be some time before I get to see you again. So I'm just looking forward to cherishing this day with you all. So thank you. One more thing. Yes, I would love to do. Do you want to lead this?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So we have a special gift for Christine. Who is one of the two folks to commission Brian's piece, Staircase Variations. We have a signed a page from the first page of this score for Christine and Cecile, two sisters commissioners.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine.
This just means the world to me. As I know it will to Cecile too.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you both for making this piece possible. Enjoy the concert. I look forward to seeing you there.